You're crammed into a landing craft, water sloshing around your boots as the vessel lurches through the choppy waters of the English Channel. It's June 6th, 1944, D-Day, the massive Allied invasion of Nazi-occupied France. Your heart pounds against your ribs as you grip your M1 rifle, the metal cold and slick with sea spray. Around you, other soldiers from the 1st Division, known as the Big Red One, for their distinctive shoulder patch. They wear a grim silence, their faces pale beneath their steel helmets. Suddenly, the ground shifts violently. A grinding, tearing sound fills the air as your landing craft strikes an underwater obstacle, part of the massive German beach defenses. The bottom rips open like a tin can, and icy seawater begins pouring in around your feet. The water level rises rapidly, ankle deep, then knee deep, then waist deep. You imagine what drowning may feel like, a frantic, convulsive search for air and then silence, stillness. An explosion nearby brings you back to the present moment. You look at the churning water around you. At 6'4", you're the tallest man in the craft. The others look to you expectantly. Do you volunteer to lead the way through the surf, risking everything to guide your fellow soldiers to shore? Or do you let someone else take the deadly honor of going first into the unknown depths and murderous German machine gun fire? The decision you make in the next few seconds will determine not just your fate, but the fate of every man in that sinking landing craft. This nightmare was a reality for Ernest Hilberg, a young man from Elizabeth, New Jersey, who nearly didn't make it into the Army at all, not because he lacked courage, but because he had buck teeth. Welcome to POV World War II. I'm your host, Fernando Prieto, and today you're going to experience World War II through the eyes of Ernest Hilberg. From a college student who was initially rejected by the military for a dental defect, to a heavy weapons specialist who helped break through Hitler's Atlantic Wall and push into Nazi Germany. You'll feel the weight of mortar shells on your shoulders as you sprint under fire and discover how a $50 waterproof watch becomes the key to launching an Allied offensive. What does it take to survive when you're told you're expendable? How do you carry on when you're literally running off the map into unknown territory? Get ready. This is Ernest's War. Today, it's yours. You're sitting in a classroom at Rutgers University in New Brunswick, New Jersey. Ernest Hilberg is your name. Born on July 25th, 1924, in Elizabeth, New Jersey, on what the locals call Mortgage Hill. So named because everyone but your father seemed to have those interest-only mortgages that preceded the 1929 stock market crash. Life has been good to your family. The FHA, the Federal Housing Administration, came through and said as long as you keep the place neat and clean and keep making payments, you can stay in your house. An empty house, after all, is worthless. Your path to Rutgers wasn't easy. You're the son of immigrants. Your mother's father went to Trinity in Dublin, Ireland, and your father's father attended university in Sweden. But your guidance counselor in high school had different ideas about your future. Look, he told you, your family hasn't got any money, and you only have average grades, so do not consider college. You looked him straight in the eye and replied, yes, but they happen to be average grades in the highest class in the school. I'm taking the scientific course. I don't care what you say. I'm going to college. What drove you to defy that guidance counselor's advice? Was it the desire to make your family proud, or simply the stubborn determination that would later serve you so well in combat? Rutgers initially refused your application, but your mother had a connection. She knew Dean Earl Reed Silvers very well. He would write news articles for the Elizabeth Daily Journal and drop them off with your mother at the railroad station. She would take them into Elizabeth to be delivered to the newspaper. Your mother suspected he sometimes invented news when there wasn't enough to fill the pages, in the tradition of Ben Franklin, who famously created stories for his own newspaper. Why argue with success? The first semester at Rutgers was eye-opening. Many of your classmates had scholarships but seemed lost, while you, paying your own way with money saved from jobs at the A&P grocery store and delivering magazines, found yourself essentially repeating high school material. Then, in late 1941, the war started, and everything changed. A scholarship opened up when someone was drafted or volunteered, and suddenly you could afford to continue your education. But the war called to young men your age with an irresistible pull. You decided to enlist, to do your part. There was just one problem. You were rejected by the ERC, the Enlisted Reserve Corps, a program that let college students continue their studies while preparing for military service. It was because of a physical impairment. Buck teeth. That's right, buck teeth. What's the physical impairment for buck teeth? You asked the recruiter, genuinely puzzled. You couldn't bite off the gunpowder wad, came the reply, referring to the old practice of soldiers biting open paper cartridges to load black powder weapons, though this hadn't been relevant to modern warfare for quite some time. You stared at him in disbelief. You're really going to give me a rifle like that? The excuse seemed absurd, but it was official. You tried everywhere. Jobs at Merck, other defense contractors supplying the war effort. Everywhere you went, the answer was the same. You're unclassified. You'd been refused by the ERC. Couldn't enlist anywhere else. What were your options now? What the heck, you thought. I'll get classified 4F, the draft classification for men physically unfit for military service. At least you'll no longer be in the limbo of lacking classification. You went for your draft physical expecting to be rejected for the same dental issue that kept you out of the reserves. But something went wrong with that plan. At the end of the examination, for some reason, you found yourself raising your right hand, swearing to support the Constitution of the United States. Something went really wrong with this deal, you thought as you took the oath. How does it feel to be drafted into an army that had previously rejected you? Do you feel vindicated that they finally want you? Or worried that their standards have dropped so low, they'll take anyone? The train journey to Camp Croft in Spartanburg, South Carolina, is unlike anything you've experienced. When you and your fellow recruits disembark, the sergeant takes one look at your group and shakes his head. What the hell? Did they have you shoveling coal? It's a fair question. In those days, trains are coal-fired, and the only way to cool off during the journey was to open the windows. After spending a day on the train with open windows, you're all covered in soot from head to toe. Why didn't you wash up? The sergeant demands. Like where? You reply, and the absurdity of the question gets a few chuckles from your fellow recruits. Camp Croft turns out to be quite a nice place to be. You're trained in heavy weapons, machine guns and mortars, crew-served weapons that provide supporting fire for infantry attacks. The irony isn't lost on you. The same military that rejected you for buck teeth is now trusting you with some of their most sophisticated weaponry. The training is thorough and intense. You learn to break down and reassemble your weapons blindfolded. You memorize the ballistic tables for mortar fire. You practice coordinating with other units, calling in artillery support, and most importantly, you learn to work as part of a team where every man's life depends on the others. But there's something the instructors can't teach you in basic training, something you'll only learn when the bullets start flying. How to live and work in the field with death breathing down your neck every moment. When your training at Camp Croft is complete, most of your fellow soldiers get shipped out to various units around the world. But you and about 6 others are left behind with no explanation. There are just enough of you to keep the building running, and nobody tells you why you're staying while everyone else heads off to war. What's going through your mind during those weeks of uncertainty? Do you worry that you're being passed over for combat duty? Or do you secretly hope that maybe you'll sit out the war in relative safety? You spend weekends taking trips to North Carolina, where it's cooler. But finally, you get orders to ship out to Fort Meade in Maryland. You're told you'll spend a maximum of 3 days here. 3 weeks later, you're still there, which brings you to around December 1st. At least you get leave and can dash up to visit your parents for an early Christmas celebration. From Fort Meade, you're transferred to Orangeburg, New York. Definitely a maximum of 3 days, they tell you again, because this is where you get on the boat and go out. But along comes New Year's Eve, and you're still there. The officers give you permission to celebrate in New York City. Knowing New York from your childhood in nearby Elizabeth, you head straight for the Stage Door Canteen, a famous club where celebrities entertained servicemen for free. Plus, you hit all the USOs, the United Service Organizations that provided recreation for military personnel. You get free tickets every other day for stage shows. You see Oklahoma, while the other guys are spending their money. When it comes time for poker games, you become the house because you're the only one with money left. You discover an important truth about gambling. If you're the house, you can't lose. Do you think your frugal approach to money will serve you well in combat? Or are there some things worth spending everything on when you might not live to see tomorrow? Finally, you board the SS Ile-de-France, a converted luxury liner now serving as a troop transport. The ship is massive, designed to carry thousands of soldiers across the dangerous Atlantic. You're told you'll exercise every day during the crossing, but looking at the ship crowded with thousands of soldiers, you're not sure how that's even possible. Your company, a military unit of about 200 men, is split up into 10 different locations throughout the ship, 20 men per location. You're assigned to E-deck, deep in the belly of the vessel. During a storm, the ship starts leaking, and eventually the water in your compartment reaches about 3 inches deep. Nobody seems to be doing anything about it. Finally, you decide to take action. You go up to the purser and say, "Hey, we've got a leak. Are you going to do something about it?" The army comes down with shovels and buckets, ordering everyone to start bailing. The captain gives the order, but you have a competing perspective. "Sir, you're not my captain," you tell him. "I might be delegated for another duty, so I've got to keep free for doing something else." You honestly believe this might be true, so while everyone else is shoveling water, you stay ready for other assignments. Eventually, they weld the leak shut. The crisis is over. During the crossing, you see flying fish that are iridescent in the dark. A magical sight that briefly makes you forget about the war waiting on the other side of the ocean. Your voyage ends after finally arriving in Greenock, Scotland. You've crossed the Atlantic into a dangerous new world. What's it like to be completely cut off from everything familiar, surrounded by thousands of other young men all heading toward the same uncertain fate? Do you feel part of something larger than yourself, or utterly alone despite the crowd? From Greenock, you travel by train to Yeovil in southern England. You're housed in Quonset huts, prefabricated metal shelters shaped like half-cylinders, heated by skinny pot-bellied stoves. They hand you coke, high-carbon, smokeless fuel, to stay warm. The problem is, newspapers won't get coke burning, and there's no wood available. You and your fellow soldiers figure out a solution. Since you're taking care of officers' quarters in your spare time, you take the soft coal from the officers and give them the coke in exchange. The soft coal can be started with rolled-up newspapers, and then you can add the coke to keep it burning. One day, the sergeant announces that 10% of you can go on leave, but the rest have to stay to guard the camp. Against what? You ask. In case there are German invaders, he replies. You look around at the barren landscape and respond, "Sir, I haven't found a good-sized rock to throw at anyone, let alone a weapon." The sergeant keeps quiet. The next day, he admits he misheard the instructions. 10% have to stay to guard the camp. The rest can take off. Attention to small details becomes crucial for survival. When the sergeant complains that your clothing looks terrible and asks why you don't hang it up, you point out that you don't have any clothes hangers, but you've noticed a cable outside doing nothing. and you ask permission to untwist it to make coat hangers. These problem-solving skills, improvising solutions with available materials, will serve you well in combat. How do these months of preparation and waiting affect your readiness for battle? Do you feel like a seasoned soldier by now? Or like a civilian playing at war? Eventually, you're transferred to the 1st Division, the Big Red One. This is a unit with history, a division that's seen combat in North Africa and Sicily. When you arrive, there are only about 4 of you new replacements being brought in, and you immediately ask what your duties will be. Don't worry about it, they tell you. Why not? You're a supernumerary. What the heck is a supernumerary? The answer chills you to the bone. Well, you're the guys that die and we live. You know, if they're gonna kill 10% of the regiment, that's the way it's been in the invasion of Sicily and the invasion of North Africa. The newest guys die. You have a different take on that philosophy, but it gives you a new perspective on what you're facing. The casual cruelty of this revelation hits hard. These veterans have seen their friends die and been replaced by fresh faces who then die in turn. To protect themselves emotionally, they've learned not to get attached to new arrivals. You're not a person to them yet. You're just a replacement, a number, a body to fill a gap in the ranks. One day, for some reason, you're told to take apart and clean the sergeant's .45 pistol, the standard American sidearm. You look at the weapon and admit, "Sergeant, I don't know how to get the safeties on or off this thing. I've never seen one before." In disgust, he gives you some other duty. It would have been handy if he'd taught you how to use a .45, but that's not how things work in the Army. You're the last person in the company to be paid because you're a draftee. Those with serial numbers starting with 3 instead of 1 for volunteers. This doesn't build any sort of comradeship at all. Everything about your status reinforces that you're an outsider, expendable, not really part of the group. How does it feel to be told outright that you're expected to die? Do you accept this fate? Or does it make you more determined to prove them wrong? The division conducts a practice invasion to prepare for the real thing. You board ships, sail out into the English Channel, and around midnight or 2 in the morning, you hear gunfire. Great simulation, you figure. You land at Torquay, practicing the techniques you'll need for the real invasion. The practice reveals problems. The bunkers you encounter could be wiped out by a 3-inch shell, and you're supposed to walk back to be picked up and taken to your base. It rains on and off, and there's a running joke about your raincoats. You always have them off when it's raining, and on when it isn't. Finally, someone says, "Take them off or leave them on, it's up to you." You're taken back to Broadway, your base just north of Portland. There are constant warnings. This is when we're gonna go. This is when we're going. All of a sudden, things start getting serious. Troops come in and string barbed wire around your encampment, presumably so you won't leave. You happen to be the one carrying the wire cutters, and when the sergeant asks for them, he cuts through the wire so you can play baseball. These guys have been through 2 invasions already, and they're sure they won't be in on this one. Then you get all your assignments for D-Day, the Allied invasion of France. In your inexperience, you ask, "What's this business with D-Day and H-Hour?" The reaction is immediate and alarming. Your question causes you to be introduced to the CID, the Criminal Investigation Division, the Army's police force. "Why do you want to know when H-Hour is?" "I didn't ask when," you protest. "I just wanted to know what it meant." It turns out it's simply when you start counting time for the operation, but they hadn't explained this basic military terminology. What does it mean to be on the verge of the largest invasion in history? Do you feel prepared for what's coming, or completely out of your depth? June 6th, 1944, D-Day. You're packed into a landing craft with your fellow soldiers, heading toward the beaches of Normandy, The channel is rough and everyone is seasick. The most sensitive throw up first, and after that smell hits the confined space, it becomes real easy for everyone else to follow suit. You're hungry because breakfast is long gone, lost to the motion sickness that affects nearly every man in the craft. Before the invasion, you had mentioned to one of the fellows in your platoon, a unit of about 30 men, "Hey, we've never been taught how to retreat." His response was immediate and firm. "The 1st Division retreated once, and we ain't gonna do that again." Retreat was worse than going ahead. Now, as your landing craft approaches the beach, you see the reality of D-Day. The guys who landed first are still on the beach. They're supposed to move inland, but they're pinned down by German machine gun and artillery fire. You can see a group trying to get up the hill as your craft begins its approach. You're supposed to land at about 9:30, but there's no way that's happening. You can't find a place to land because the 29th Division has ended up in the same space where the 1st Division is supposed to land. Plus, the Germans are shelling the shore with artillery. Then word comes down to withdraw to your ships. When the order comes, you look around at your fellow soldiers. The Coast Guardsman starts to turn the landing craft around, but you stop him. "No, you don't. We're not withdrawing," you tell him firmly. "Who's gonna make me?" he challenges. You look around at the other soldiers in your craft. "Well, I think there are at least 13 guys on here that say you're not gonna withdraw. You're outgunned by about 13 to 1 at best." The Coast Guardsman is less than pleased about this, but he's outnumbered. What you decide to do instead is hide behind the destroyer USS McCook. The ship is moving so close to the shore you're sure it's going to ground, methodically knocking out the German pillboxes one by one, concrete bunkers housing machine guns. This gives the troops time to clear the way forward. Finally, you make your approach to the beach. What was going through your mind when you refused the withdrawal order? Were you following military training, acting on instinct, or simply too stubborn to turn back after coming so far? Suddenly, your landing craft hits an obstacle. Part of the German beach defense is designed to sink boats. That tears the bottom right out. Water starts rising rapidly around your feet. The craft is sinking, and you need to get to shore fast. "What are we gonna do?" someone asks. At 6'4", you're the tallest man in the craft. "What I'll do is, if you give me the rope, I'll walk into shore since I'm the tallest one. I probably won't be over my head." But the regulars, the veteran soldiers, aren't gonna let this draftee show them the way. They pile over the side into the surf, but due to the sound of the guns and the chaos, the moment they hit water, they let go of the rope. It's no help to the rest of you. Finally, when everybody else is out of the landing craft, you climb over the side. At 6'4", you figure you'll be able to wade in, but the water is too deep. "Oh geez, I don't want to drown," you think as you go under. You push off the bottom and discover you can bounce up and get a breath of air. The trick is to bounce up and forward at the same time, making progress toward the shore with each leap. As you're struggling through the surf, you hear someone calling, "Help! Help!" You grab his arm and pull him along with you, both of you bouncing and gasping as you make your way toward the beach. Eventually, you reach water shallow enough to walk in, but simultaneously, at that exact moment, the man you've been helping takes a bullet in the head. He's killed instantly. As his body goes limp, you let go of his arm. You surrender him to the surf, one of hundreds of young men rolling lifeless in the waves. How do you process the cruel irony of saving someone from drowning, only to watch him die from enemy fire seconds later? Do you feel responsible? Or do you push the emotion away and focus on survival? You move ahead through the chaos of the beach and spot your sergeant. He's standing on a bridge that crosses an anti-tank trap, a great wide ditch designed to stop armored vehicles. The Germans didn't destroy this particular bridge, leaving it intact for some reason. Your sergeant is standing there, seemingly looking for something. After about 15 minutes, that feel like an hour, You sit down behind him and finally ask, "Sarge, who the hell are you looking for?" He gives you a dirty look, and you realize he was looking for you. You follow him down into the ditch, which provides complete cover from machine gun fire and artillery. It's here that you discover the rules of war are liberally interpreted in actual combat. The Germans defending this section of the beach aren't actually Germans. They're Russians, soldiers from the Soviet Union who have been pressed into service by the Wehrmacht, the German army. The only Americans who can communicate with them are soldiers with Jewish backgrounds who know some Yiddish, a language similar enough to some Slavic languages to allow basic communication. You watch as these soldiers interrogate the prisoners, asking where the German guns are located. The prisoners give only name, rank, and serial number, as required by the Geneva Convention governing treatment of prisoners of war. The interrogator reaches the end of his patience. He takes one safety off his .45 pistol and repeats the question. Still no answer. He takes the second safety off, and suddenly the prisoner tells him exactly where the guns are located. As you walk by this scene, you mutter to yourself, "So much for the Articles of War." That is, the military laws governing conduct in combat. But you decide to not press the point. This is your first lesson in the reality of combat. The rules you learned in training often don't apply when lives are on the line. You climb out of the tank ditch and begin moving inland. You notice white pieces of paper or handkerchiefs scattered on the ground. For some reason, maybe just neatness, you avoid stepping on them. Finally, you see an engineer with his foot blown off, a tourniquet around his leg, and you ask him, "What's with the pieces of white paper?" "Oh, that's where the mines are," he explains casually. Now you understand why you instinctively avoided those white markers. The engineers have marked the location of German mines, hidden explosive devices triggered by pressure, but nobody bothered to explain this system to you. A shell explodes nearby, maybe 100 feet away, and you ask your sergeant, "Sergeant, aren't we supposed to duck for cover? Do you know where the mines are?" He responds, "Okay, I get your point. Better to stay exposed to artillery than to step on a mine." What's it like to realize that the ground itself is your enemy, that every step could be your last? How do you keep moving forward when you can't trust the earth beneath your feet? You eventually start up the hill with the engineers and some infantry. You find one shell hole on the beach. There were supposed to be shell holes all over, offering protection. You never realized you could curl up into such a small space as you squeeze into that single crater for cover. Eventually, you decide to move on, and around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you get hungry. You pull out your standard, military-issued, D-ration chocolate bar. It's about 5 inches long, 2 or 3 inches wide, and 1 inch thick. It looks like baker's chocolate. It's real dark and real hard, but it's something. Your sergeant sees you eating and asks in amazement, "You're eating?" Right after dark, you reach a location where you can finally move on to your K-rations, canned meals that were the standard field food for American troops. The major comes around asking, "Anybody got a watch that works?" You volunteer your new watch, a $50 waterproof model you bought in basic training when yours failed. The watch will be more valuable than you can possibly imagine, becoming the timepiece used to launch the next day's attack. You have one requirement. Anybody who borrows your watch has to bring it back to you the next day. This seemingly small detail will save you some serious grief later on. Do you think it's preparation, luck, or intuition that led you to buy that timepiece? How is it that the smallest decisions sometimes have the biggest consequences in war? On about the 5th day inland, something remarkable happens. You're served real, hot breakfast by the cooks, not K-rations. The kitchen staff is in a mood because it turns out your unit has infiltrated so far ahead that they didn't know where you were. The mobile kitchen had to literally fight their way up to your position to serve you. Your unit eventually reaches a point where you stop advancing. There's nobody in front of you at all. You're at least a mile ahead of all the other American forces. You're the only ones out there, holding an exposed position with no support on either flank. This is when the Germans decide to launch a counterattack against your isolated position. The German assault is fierce and determined. Your 2 mortars, portable artillery pieces that fire shells in a high arc, become the only defense for your advanced position. You'll need to burn through ammunition like there's no tomorrow, because if you don't, there may not be one for you. You glance frantically around you and realize there's a problem. "Where's the ammunition?" you ask. They point to where the Jeep with additional rounds is parked, some distance away through open ground swept by German fire. Without hesitation, you take off at a run. You sprint across the exposed ground and return with 6 rounds of ammunition on each shoulder. 12 rounds total, each weighing several pounds. Every other ammunition carrier in the section now follows your example, running back to get more rounds. What drives you to make that dangerous sprint? Is it training, instinct, or something deeper? The knowledge that your own survival depends on your fellow soldiers. You're firing so fast that the mortar barrels are overheating. One round never gets triggered by the firing pin. It goes off from the heat of the barrel alone, launching with a distinctive whoosh that everyone recognizes as a dangerous misfire. The German counterattack is the most intense fighting you've experienced so far. Wave after wave of enemy soldiers advance toward your position, only to be cut down by your mortars and the few rifles your unit can bring to bear. When the smoke clears, the counterattack has cost the Germans dearly, but you've lost a tank. Worse, the GIs who abandoned it didn't destroy the radio, so you can no longer use those frequencies. The Germans will be listening in. After this action, your unit sits in position until about July 20th. On July 25th, your birthday, all hell breaks loose in what you'll later learn is Operation Cobra, the breakout from the Normandy beachhead. The countryside explodes, as if the built-up tension and frustration from the slow post-D-Day advance gives way to walls of fire. Massive 155mm artillery pieces, and every heavy gun in the United States Army is firing simultaneously. Bombers flying high above Normandy pour an obscene amount of bombs on the Germans' heads. Some land in the wrong place, behind your own lines instead of on the enemy positions, despite the care taken to avoid friendly fire. Some of the bombs claim American lives. Operation Cobra, nonetheless, breaks the back of the German defenders. The way is clear for American forces to push further into enemy territory. This is where the history of the 1st Division comes back to haunt the veterans. The malaria they contracted during the North African campaign starts affecting those who served there. You watch tough combat veterans suddenly sweating and shivering simultaneously as the tropical disease flares up. After a few days, they recover sufficiently to continue, but it's a reminder that the war's effects linger long after the battle's end. You end up having to take malaria pills, quinine. At one location, your unit encounters a large German hospital. It's huge, suspiciously large for a medical facility. Your forces surround the place, maintaining a watchful perimeter. At night, the building suddenly opens fire and launches an attack against your positions. The Germans inside had been using the medical facility as a military strongpoint. They regret this decision tremendously after you counterattack. Your unit becomes so well coordinated with the Air Force that you can give specific instructions to bomber pilots. On one mountain road blocked by German tanks, you tell the pilots, "When you drop your bombs, blow the tanks off the road because the last time you did it, the tank took us hours to get out of the way." The Air Corps complies, and the German tanks are blown clear of the roadway, allowing your advance to continue without delay. You capture so many German vehicles that you have to put orange identification banners on all of them to prevent friendly fire incidents. The German equipment is often better than what you're using, so American forces are happy to liberate enemy vehicles for their own use. There's real danger from this practice, though. You're actually strafed by British aircraft once because they mistake your captured German vehicles for enemy forces. Being on the receiving end of friendly fire is nowhere anyone wants to find themselves. As you roll through France, you discover that many of the farmers speak with Polish accents. Apparently, the Poles had been imported to work French farms by the German occupation forces. One day, you encounter a colonel wandering around a schoolhouse, looking lost and frustrated. "Colonel, what's your problem?" you ask. "I've run off the map," he admits. "I don't know where we are. I haven't got a map of this area." "Have you tried the schoolhouse?" you suggest. "That's where we're checking, but nobody has a map of this region." Your unit has advanced so rapidly that you've literally outrun your maps. Eventually, they have to drop new ones to you by air so you can figure out where you are and continue the advance. What does it feel like to be advancing so fast that you're literally running off the map? Do you feel like you're winning the war or getting dangerously ahead of your supply lines and support? One day, you get a copy of the Stars and Stripes, the official military newspaper, and read that your division is now under General George S. Patton's command. Almost instantly, the 1st Division stops moving. The veterans refuse to fight under Patton because of their experience in Sicily. As the story goes, Patton had put all his vehicles on one ship and all his personnel on another ship. When the first was sunk, he took all the vehicles from the 1st Division, leaving them to fight with whatever they could find. The veterans you're serving with, mostly from the New York area, had to learn how to drive donkeys, mules, and any other animals they could find. Not exactly a usual form of transportation in the 5 boroughs. "After a while, you could get pretty good at it," they tell you, but they hate Patton for what they see as abandoning them. In one tank attack, they had to fight with phosphorus shells, incendiary rounds that burn intensely, because they had no heavy weapons beyond 81mm mortars. Fortunately, throwing a lot of phosphorus around does discourage enemy attacks, but the experience left them bitter toward Patton's leadership style. Within days, you're switched back to General Omar Bradley's command, and the advance resumes. One major advantage at this stage of the war is that the Germans believe their own propaganda. They always think American forces are 20 miles behind where they actually are. This intelligence failure leads to remarkable opportunities. One time, you arrive at a train station just as a German supply train pulls in, loaded with food. You eat like kings for the next month. Your unit moves through Belgium, where the Germans try to snuff you out with V1 and V2 rockets, the world's first guided missiles. This intrigues you because you think, since we don't know where we are, how do they know where we are? The German intelligence is so poor that their rockets don't come closer than 20 miles to your actual position. You can hear them going overhead. They sound like freight trains flying through the sky. How does it feel to be part of an army that's advancing so fast the enemy can't keep track of where you are? Do you feel invincible? Or do you worry about what might happen if the German enemy gets reorganized? As autumn approaches, your rapid advance slows as you reach the German border and encounter the Siegfried Line, Germany's massive defensive network of concrete bunkers, tank traps, and minefields, also known as the West Wall. Your unit is assigned to attack Aachen, one of the most heavily fortified cities on the German border. The fighting here is different from anything you've experienced. These aren't hastily prepared positions. The Germans have had years to perfect these defenses. During this phase of the advance, you come across a potential lucrative discovery while digging your slit trench. You hit coal about 3 feet down. "Sarge, can I get the coal rights?" you joke. But digging into coal is genuinely difficult. Your small pickaxe bounces off the hard material, making it nearly impossible to create proper defensive positions, adding unnecessary complication to an already tough situation. You learn the regular 155mm artillery shells do nothing to the massive concrete pillboxes protecting Aachen. These fortifications are built to withstand direct hits from the heaviest weapons in the American arsenal. The engineers develop innovative solutions to deal with the bunkers. Sometimes they maintain continuous machine gun fire on a pillbox to keep the defenders' heads down, then bring up a bulldozer to bury the entire structure like a dog burying a bone. It's an effective, if unorthodox, method of dealing with fortifications that can't be destroyed by conventional means. Other times, they fire flare pistols into the bunkers. With concrete walls, the flares bounce around inside like pinballs, creating a terrifying light show that usually convinces the defenders to abandon their positions quickly. But the Germans learn to adapt too. One pillbox changes hands multiple times, taken 3 times by American forces and retaken 4 times by the Germans. Eventually, someone suggests that burying it would have been a good idea from the start. Your unit faces a particularly challenging tactical situation during one urban assault. After launching an attack on a building, you receive orders to fire your mortars on a specific position. "Sir, that's where you're supposed to be," you point out to the officer giving the order. "Yes, the Germans are on the first floor and we're in the cellar and we want to get rid of the first floor," he explains. You fire on the position as ordered, and the tactic works. The Germans abandon the upper floor, leaving it to the American forces in the basement. Not exactly a textbook order, but pretty effective. The urban fighting creates other complications. During one attack, both American and German forces advance simultaneously on a foggy day. This isn't the way war is ideally supposed to work, and the results are chaotic. Suddenly, an American infantryman appears wandering around your mortar position, looking completely lost. "What are you doing here?" you ask. "I don't know myself what I'm doing here," he replies honestly. The 2 attacks have crossed in the fog and become thoroughly mixed up. Instead of reprimanding the lost soldier, your officers put him to work, guarding your position while they try to sort out the tactical situation. The major stands beside you, clearly frustrated. "I don't know what the hell to do under these conditions." You make a tactical suggestion. "Sir, if you've got any reserves, I think they could go up and take the position you're trying to take, because I think the Germans are lost, and I don't think they have anybody where they launched from." The major follows your advice, and it works. Your unit suddenly finds that you've surrounded the Germans, but it means some of your own people are in positions where the Germans are on both sides of them. The situation gets messy quickly. What's it like to be an enlisted man giving tactical advice to officers? Do you feel confident in your combat experience, or worried about overstepping your authority? The tactical complexity creates supply problems. You can't bring food up to the forward positions because of the confused battle lines. Your unit goes through every ration you have and starts liberating food from German homes. You figure you're not supposed to starve to death. One morning, you're awakened by your sergeant with an unusual request. "Pick a number from 1 to 10. 4, you respond. "Pick another." "Why am I picking numbers?" you ask, confused. "Because we've got to decide which one of you guys are going up to relieve the machine gun squad. There's been an attack during the night, and the machine gun troops are down to just 2 people. Someone has to volunteer to fill the gaps. Rather than leave it to chance, you make the decision yourself." "Oh hell, I'll go up," you say. You don't want the responsibility of picking someone else for what could be a death sentence. You advance to the machine gun position and see the evidence of the night's fighting. A row of dead Germans lying in front of the position. The sergeant who survived the attack has 1 gunner left. The next morning, the sergeant comes over to talk to you. In the middle of a sentence, he takes a bullet right in the forehead from a German sniper. He drops instantly. Normally, you would call for medics, but you realize that if someone's in a position where they can hit him in the forehead with a precise shot, calling for medics would just draw more sniper fire. You keep quiet about the sergeant's death. Apparently he was popular, and when word gets around, the loss hits the unit hard. How do you cope with watching someone die while they're talking to you? Do you become numb to death? or does each loss affect you more deeply? By this point in your combat experience, you've learned to turn off your emotions. Right at the beach on D-Day, seeing dead and wounded bodies everywhere, you told yourself, this is not real. This is a 3D movie. It's not real. You turned your emotions off as a survival mechanism. It keeps you going, but takes a toll on your humanity. One night while going on guard duty, you jump into a foxhole and catch your foot on a step that the previous occupant had carved into the side, a perceived improvement on the hole. Generally, your toe isn't supposed to touch your leg, but that's exactly what happens when you catch the step wrong. The pain is absolutely excruciating, but you try to carry on and continue your duties. By the third day of walking around with the injury, you've had enough. The hell with it, you think. You just walk back to the aid station, openly crossing ground that's normally swept by sniper fire. So shoot me, see if I care. You're in such pain that you don't have time to worry about the danger anymore. One of the times you make this exposed walk, a German aircraft zooms overhead and starts firing. You hit the dirt, get up, and continue to the aid station. Meanwhile, a medic has been watching you. Ernie, you've been hit, he tells you. Where? You ask, genuinely surprised. Your knee is bleeding. You look down. Oh, yes, you respond, as if noticing it for the first time. Well, you just earned a Purple Heart, the medic informs you. The irony isn't lost on you. You've been worried about your injured toe, but you're getting a Purple Heart for a knee wound you didn't even notice receiving. Years later, when you're discharged, you discover that you've actually been awarded a Bronze Star, too. You ask the veterans' representatives if they can find out why you received it. Because there was no commendation ceremony, no explanation. The Purple Heart, of course, you know the story behind. What does it mean to receive medals for actions you consider just doing your job? Do you feel proud of these honors, or embarrassed by the attention? Looking back, what strikes you most about your war experience? Was it the randomness of survival? How a $50 waterproof watch could save your life? Or how buck teeth nearly kept you out of the Army entirely? Was it the bonds formed with fellow soldiers who shared the ultimate test of human endurance? Or was it the discovery of your own capabilities when pushed beyond what you thought were your limits? The boy who was rejected by the Army for dental defects became the soldier who carried ammunition under fire and who refused withdrawal orders on D-Day. Perhaps that's the most important lesson of your war, that the labels others put on us, whether it's physically unfit for service or supernumerary destined to die, don't have to define our destiny. Sometimes what others see as our greatest weaknesses become our unexpected strengths. Your buck teeth didn't keep you from serving your country with distinction. Being labeled expendable didn't make you expendable. Being told you were just a replacement didn't prevent you from making a difference. In the end, you survived what many others didn't, not because you were stronger or braver or better, but because of a combination of training, luck, stubbornness, and the support of fellow soldiers who watched your back while you watched theirs. This has been the story of Ernest Hilberg, one soldier among millions. May we never forget their courage, their sacrifice, and their enduring example of what ordinary people can accomplish when fighting for something greater than themselves. This story can be shared thanks to a partnership with the Rutgers University Oral History Archives. If you've got a story you'd like their help in sharing, visit oralhistory.rutgers.edu. That's oralhistory.rutgers.edu. Visit povwworldwar2.com for podcast updates and more. That's povww2.com. I'm Fernando Prieto. Thanks for listening.